Hey guys, Tarke here, and I'm a little bit tired, just as a heads up. I've just come back from the hospital, so just bear with me. Now, I said I was going to get the build video out today, so here is my Rain of Arrows Ignite Prolif, and you can do this as a Raider, a Chieftain, or a Slayer. There will not be map footage just because I've been a bit caught up with hospital stuff. I haven't been able to level up as quick as I can. I will have a map update tomorrow. Now, I'm going to break down the 3 different ways of doing this character, and before we get into this, I want to say there is the clear speed option, the I have numbers option. Think about all 3, and this will also be an opportunity for me to talk about utility in Path of Building, because a lot of people just completely ignore utility. Now, let's just get into it. So, what is the core concept? This is very similar to the Burning Arrow Split Arrow character I played at Earth's League, if anyone saw it. I've just made a very basic 5-link setup of Rain of Arrows, Chance to Ignite, Slower Projectiles, Fire Pen, and Wed. If you did have a 6th link, you could run stuff like Conk Effect with increased AoE, swapping in and out, blah, 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 blah. Use a Herald of Ash and an Anger, and then everything else is just sort of utility, you know, flammability curse on here, etc., etc., etc. So, shoot once into the pack, get a big Ignite, run forward, Prolif, and Herald of Ash clears up any stragglers. The big Ignite is what lets you kill single target stuff down. In terms of gearing, you will use a Xoph's Nurture alongside the Signal Fire. That's how you're going to get 100% fire conversion. Xoph's Nurture also gives you 10% chance to ignite, which helps us ignite enemies. And it also gives you some life recovery on ignite, which helps against reflect. And it does give you a 12-yard Prolif. The Signal Fire gives you the other 50% of your conversion. And it also gives you up to 35% of physical damage as extra fire damage. For the Helm, use either a Devoto's Devotion or the Gull. It will depend completely on personal preference. Some people love the Gull, use it for everything. Some people love Devoto's for everything. I'm going to try out Devoto's just because I want to run particularly quick, but the Gull is probably the go-to choice, especially since we do scale off of AoE. Having the massive shrines does give additional AoE. I think the Gull is the best option. It does also give life, and it does make it easier to get resists. I'm getting Devoto's because I do want a little bit of Chaos Rest somewhere on my gear, and movement speed does always equal clear speed. For body armor, you would ideally use a Comb's Heart. If you can't afford a Comb's, use a Belly of the Beast, and then go for rare gloves, boots, 2 rings. Belt, 100% Diad Dawn, no argument. It gives you life, it gives you resists, and it also gives you enemies ignited by attack burn 35% faster. This is basically a more multiplier on your ignite. This is very important. For the amulet, if you can afford it, go for a Xoph's Blood. If you cannot afford the amulet, go for an Ahama Tiki. You just want something which gives you lots of fire scaling. The reason why we want Xoph's Blood is it gives us some fire penetration, which is just more damage. And also it does give you Avatar of Fire. So if you do want to use a different quiver or a different bow, that does open you up to some flexibility. But mostly using it for the fire penetration and the life. It does also give you cover enemies in Ash when they hit you. Basically, when an enemy hits you, I believe they are slowed and take more fire damage. Otherwise, for uniques, you want a Wise Oak Flask. You can use just whatever flask in every other slot. Do not use a Vinctars with a Xoph's Blood or an Itziri's Promise because it gives you Avatar of Fire. If you drop the Xoph's Blood, you can run either a Vinctar or an Itziri's. For jewels, you just want life, then either fire damage, projectile damage, increased damage, or area damage. That is the basic gear. So now that all of that is out of the way, let's talk about the skill trees. So as I said, you can do a Raider, a Slayer, or a Chieftain variant. This is the Raider version that I've come up with. With the gear that I showed you, you'll have 7.1k life at level 90. And you will have more than enough Ignite damage. You'll have an Ignite damage of about 150k on a 5-link. Okay. Which is plenty fine. And the tree is pretty straightforward. We managed to get to dodge a cap thanks to a Val Grace, and with all the movement speed that we push with this build, you can have 100% uptime on Val Grace. If you feel like that's kind of overkill, just drop the Val Grace, run a Val Haste instead, but we have enough movement speed. You can see we'll have 181% movement speed, and that is not using a Alchemist Quicksilver, that's just using an Ample Quicksilver, so it's always going to be active. You will eventually want to go for a Alchemist, but I've just imported the gear I currently have on my current character, which is why it's looking like this. And this is again also without opals, this is just me importing exactly what I have on my current character. and you can see the movement speed is more than fine. So, because of the dodge cap having 7k life, that's pretty respectable. That is enough survivability that you can get away with going full YOLO on the movement speed, and why I've picked Raider for my personal character over either the Slayer or the Chieftain, which I'll break down soon. The main advantage of Raider, outside of all the additional movement speed, and you get a lot of movement speed from Raider, is you get all this extra steroid for frenzy charges, and you get frenzy charge generation, which will always be active while bossing. This means that your damage is very consistent. Raider has the most consistent damage of all of the available options because you are always at maximum potential. Both Slayer and Chieftain, sorry, apparently the house is collapsing around me, require have killed recently effects, meaning your damage can sometimes feel very clunky if you've had to, zone through doors, if you haven't got ads lying around. Now the cats decided to join in onto the fray. It also gives you phasing, which is very nice, just utility and pseudo survivability. It means that you can move through packs much easier. It fits very well with the bow playstyle, especially since Blink Arrow is on a cooldown. It makes navigating breaches incredibly smooth, and you don't really notice it until you have it. Otherwise, the tree is fairly straightforward. We route through life, get the 2 efficient proj damage nodes, come down. We go through the bottom section to get more chance to ignite, which is very important. Primeval Force, life, get 1 piece of mana leech, frenzy, jewel, acro, phase acro, wed, pen, life, frenzy. Come through, pick up the 2-point jewel. We take this bottom route rather than this top route because Rain of Arrows scales very well to projectile speed. And for anyone wondering why we're using Rain of Arrows is better than Blast Rain for single ignites. If you play an Emberwick taming build, go with Blast Rain. Rain of Arrows is just 1 big hit in an AoE. Because of that, it also means you don't need to use any weapon swaps. I've been playing a lot of explosive arrow builds recently and other builds with combs which will weapon swap into a barrage setup. Weapon swap can sometimes feel quite clunky, and a lot of people don't like it. So I wanted to make a build which wasn't reliant on any weapon swaps to have good AoE and single target clear. So that is why we're using Rain of Arrows. It also means that you can scale your jewels very easily because you can use fire damage, projectile damage, and or area damage. Life, jewel, life regen. Pick up the jewel, come through, grab the life, route through this way, get the life regen, get the life, get the area damage, get Elementalist. It gives you some auras, which is very helpful, some LE damage, which double dips, and some additional chance to ignite. The reason we take these 3 points rather than just filling in these missing life nodes here is this is the equivalent of a 4% to 5% nodes and then the little bit of regen. I value regen quite high, so I like having all this additional regen. If you don't value regen at all, you can instead just spend the points filling in these 5% nodes, pick up the jewel, pick up LE Overload. Okay, that is the base Raider version, 181% movement speed. Now let's compare it to the Slayer version. Slayer, 135% movement speed. You'll notice that the damage is significantly higher. You go up to just shy of 200k compared to 150k. However, that is with all your has killed recently effects. If you look at what that drops down to, without it goes down to 135. So that's why I was saying earlier about the Raider being consistent damage all the way through. With Slayer, you have this insane damage, and then if it ever drops off, you kind of get screwed over. Now, to make sure you always have that active, you can use the Worm Flask, and the Worm Flask also has particularly good synergy with the Brutal Further and the Leech aspect. So what you can do is you can use a single Worm Flask, it shoots the worms out, you then attack, the worms give you Super Leech, and it's the equivalent of having a healing potion, and it also procs your has killed recently effects, etc. I would probably still use a normal health pot alongside it, but since you do get Onslaught for free from Bane of Legends, what you can do is you can drop your Silver Flask for a Worm Flask if you go for the Slayer setup. That being said, I do take Point Blank in the Slayer tree, since it's quite neat to root by, and the reason why I don't take Point Blank in the Raider tree is the whole point of the Raider tree is to just be about moving as quickly as possible, clearing maps as quickly as possible. Because of that, you don't really want to be face tanking every pack. You just want to run, shoot, run, shoot, run, let the ignites kill everything off behind you. So you don't really want to care about your positioning too much. You just want to be like whirling through everything, going as quickly as possible. By whirl, I mean move. You just want to be running through everything, just shoot, no worries. This setup is much more about bossing because you have that nice super leech from being a Slayer. You have the slightly higher damage if you can keep the, procs active through the Worm Flask, etc. And that kind of scenario, face tanking things, makes sense because you can with the super leech that you do get from Slayer. You come through, pick up the important Wed and Pen nodes. Force of Nature, while nice, is too far away. Pick up the nice leech along the way, because as much leech as you can on a Slayer is always good, and it gives you a little bit of mana leech from this last point here. Come down, grab Lava Lash. Lava Lash is too far away on the Raider tree. As you can see, we're already fairly stretched on the Raider, hitting all the important stuff like Elite Overload. So to have the additional 6 points over here, it really isn't realistic. If you want, you can just spend individual points into this projectile damage, because this all double dips. Maybe mid-90s, higher 90s, you could rethink this and then come down and pick up something like Lava Lash. Come down and grab Iron Grip since we're next to it, and we do get a lot of strength from this setup, so this just gives us a little bit of extra scaling. It doesn't double dip, but it does give us some extra DPS. So for 1 point, you may as well take it. Pick up the life. The reason why I choose to spend the 5 points to pick up Heart of the Warrior and Warrior's Blood rather than spending just 5 points filling this in. The difference between the two is about 100 HP. You can see we go from 7.6k HP to 7.7. However, by going this way, we do also get a little bit of extra DPS from the strength scaling our Iron Grip, and we also get the extra regen. And as I've said previously, I value regen very highly. Because it does also give you the extra DPS, I think it's well worth doing. If you disagree, how they just fill in this life here. Come up, fill this stuff in, grab Devotions with the extra points and pick up Catalyze. Probably pick up Catalyze last. Again, elemental damage with weapons does not double dip, whereas raw elemental damage, raw fire damage does. So value Catalyze last. It's still a nice scaler for our DPS, but it isn't as good as you think it would. Otherwise, the tree is fairly straightforward. And again, the advantage you get from this is slightly better bossing potential with the Super Leech and the extra damage of the point blank. But your map will be significantly slower. Again, we go from 181 to 135% movement speed, and that's with a Devotos. If you choose not to run a Devotos, you'll feel even more sluggish. And then finally, there is the Chieftain variant, which also has 135 movement speed. It has the highest potential damage, and it has the highest raw life. However, and this is where Path of Building lies to you, and this is where you need to actually think a little bit when it comes to making your characters. This Slayer had the Super Leech, basically emulating Valpact, which is very good. The Raider had Dodge Cap, which is pseudo survivability. Even though you looked at a 7k HP build with Dodge Cap, then a 7.5k HP build, and now an 8k HP build, just because this one has the highest number doesn't mean it's the tankiest. Yes. Is this more resilient to one-shots? Yes, it has 8k HP. You'll get one-shot slightly more often on the Slayer with that slight 500 HP difference, and slightly more often on the Raider with the 1k HP difference. However, the Raider's going to be hit significantly less because it has Dodge Cap, and the Slayer's going to be much more resilient against anything which isn't a clean vanilla one-shot. Even 2 shots, this will be much more resilient with the Super Leech than the Chieftain will. So when it comes to evaluating characters, you need to actually really sit down and think about what will help you the most. You can also argue the phasing is incredibly important and situationally raw survivability for stuff like Breach and Beyond on the Raider, and also having the extra movement speed. Being able to dodge projectiles is much easier at 180% movement speed than 135% movement speed. So you really need to evaluate what actually is the tankiest option for your personal playstyle. Do you face tank a lot? Probably go for the Slayer. Do you like manually dodging things? Go for the Raider. Do you just not care and you just want to do the most possible damage? Go for the Chieftain. So, the Chieftain tree is nearly identical to the Slayer tree. The only real difference is you pick up the Marauder start rather than going into the Duelist stuff here. So there's not really too much to discuss there. I'll just discuss the Ascendancy options. So you come through, you get some fire damage, some regen, you get some additional chance to ignite, which does help, and with this you'll be capped ignite chance. Both the Slayer and the Raider will have about 75-80% chance to ignite, whereas with this you're going to be very close to 100% chance to ignite, so that's pretty significant. Some additional additional damage against burning enemies. This will only impact you on the second hit. The first hit won't benefit from this because it's like you hit once, they are then burning from the ignite. So you kind of need to double tap to get the full effect out of this, but whatever. Get Hinakora's Death's Fury. This gives us some leech, it gives you a little bit of pen, and it also gives you 20% of fizz as extra fire if your totems have killed recently. This is very, very significant, and where a large portion of the damage comes from. So again, you need to think about, will this always be active for raw bossing? Cat. So it's just something to think about. Take Ramiko Sun's Light for the 2-pointer. It does give you some of your maximum life regen per second per endurance charge, and it gives you some endurance charge generation just for general mapping. I personally prefer this 2-pointer to Hoa Forest Strength. If you would rather, you can drop these 2 points and pick up this. It will give you a tiny bit of damage from the increased strength and a little bit of life, but to be honest, I would rather have the endurance charges just to smooth out the damage a little bit and all the extra regen. That's personal preference. And then you take Moon's Presence, this 2-pointer. Enemies near your totems deal 8% less damage, and they take 60% increased physical and fire damage. This is quite significant since all of these builds do use a decoy totem. So for bossing, you drop the decoy totem and then start doing your Rain of Arrows setup. This is very, very important. So if you play the Chieftain setup, be aware that to have your maximum DPS potential, you want to be dropping a totem near your enemy. You can run like a Searing Bond totem to maybe get some additional fire pen, but to be honest, you already have enough, and you'd rather have the decoy totem because the decoy totem will pull the mob into it, making you safer, and it means this is always active. With the Scorching Ray totem, you could drop that and it could just be really squishy and constantly die, meaning this is just more aggro than it's realistically worth, if that makes sense. So again, just to summarize, these are the 3 different options. I'm going for the Raider option since I care about mapping far more than bossing. If you want a pure bossing character, I would recommend the Slayer. If you just want to be an Epeen warrior, you can do the Marauder variant. Why do I choose not to do Pathfinder? Because I'm sure there are plenty of you who haven't even watched this video. You've already left your angry comment. Why not a Pathfinder? Okay, let's talk about a few things. 1. Pathfinder is great. Pathfinder is particularly good. It used to be my go-to favorite ascendancy. However, I just prefer Raider these days. Raider has some significant advantages to Pathfinder, which I think you really don't notice. The main draw of Pathfinder is getting the 20% chance to ignite while using a flask. This puts you at ignite cap. This is very good. This is the reason you would take it. Ignore everything else. However, I've come to the conclusion that if you want just a pure mapping character, you care about movement speed the most. You get the most movement speed as a Raider. Look, 181% movement speed compared to, I believe, 160, if I remember correctly. 166. So you still get more movement speed from a Raider because Avatar of the Veil gives you some movement speed while phasing. You will clear the fastest as a Raider. Raider also has much smoother bossing than Pathfinder because you always have your frenzy charges active, meaning you have very smooth gameplay. Pathfinder, I'm sure you've all been in a situation where sometimes you get to the boss and, oh, I need to portal to refresh my flasks, or you're halfway through a fight and, oh, I need to go back. This can often lead to you being out of position if your flask management is less than ideal, and it's just one of those things. You will never have that issue on a Raider. The Raider is the more consistent, safer option in my personal opinion. If you want to be a Pathfinder, go for it. But to be honest, if we're going that far, I'd probably rather just be a Slayer. Yes, if you have a Dying Sun, the extra AoE scaling would be nice for all this flask effectiveness. However, fitting in a Dying Sun is particularly awkward and stuff with the Wise Oak, because it then starts messing up all of your resistances. You can't have everything perfectly capped out, and it's just stuff you need to consider. Really, I think Raider overtakes Pathfinder, in my opinion, for pure elemental attack-based builds. Still, feel free to do whatever you want. I'm Tarke, sorry for all the random noises. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.